Welcome to another edition of the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, episode number 56, Ragnow-rok Is Upon You. My name's Matthew Turner, thank you so much for joining us. I'm joined by my co-host Anthony Fitzpatrick. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing it, thanks, Matt, apart from having some technical issues here, but hopefully they are done and stood. It's been nice to have a week where we've had a little bit of time after all that we put into the draft, and I'm feeling a hell of a lot refreshed now, I will say. It's good to be back doing this, but it's nice to have a little break.
Yeah, your audio is still actually not that great, if I'm honest. That was not the best. Do you want to come back on your phone, man? I'm sorry. Sorry,
Yeah,
guys,
it's all right.
on the
Give
chat.
me a minute.
Yeah, it's fine. All right, Ashley, how you doing, man? Oh, frustrating this, but never mind. We will be back. All right. He's back.
Yeah, very sorry about that. This damn technology, it's, you prep for it all you can and then it lets you down at the last minute. But yeah, as I was saying, it's nice to be back this week. It's nice to have had a bit of a quieter week after all the stuff we did for the draft. Put a lot of work into that and it seemed like we're forever doing things. So yeah, it's been nice to have a little break. But yeah, nice to be back and doing the pod again. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You're coming through loud and clear, which is really great to hear as well. Yes, it's been good to take a break, but I've been feeling the itch already. I was just telling you before the stream, I've been sitting at home thinking, I should be doing something. I should be doing something more. So I'm really glad we're back on. Right, we're going to go into some news. We're then going to follow up with a look at the roster and how we see it as it stands. Then we're going to hit some of the questions that you've been asking us in the WhatsApp and on Twitter. So let's dive straight into that news. And to start it all off, the sad news that our second rounder, Kerryon Johnson, has been waived. He rushed for 1,225 yards and had 527 receiving yards in his 3-year Lions career. He was the first 100-yard rusher the Lions had since Reggie Bush in 2013. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm sad about this. I did kind of feel like it was inevitable somewhat with the drafting of a 7th rounder who they thought was going to be a 4th rounder and a couple of guys on the practice squad. I thought he might have lasted until camp, but it does feel like he's lost his legs a bit.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's watched this, we've been discussing for a while now, this 2018 draft class, it's been a really sad story outside of Frank Ragnow. I mean, you look at some of the picks, they've all had good seasons. Deshaun Hand had a really good start and expectations went sky high. He has just not progressed. Kerryon Johnson had a really good start. His 100-yard games, just expectations went high. Injuries and just no progression there has just meant that these decisions have had to be made. And it's the same with Tracy Walker. Good start, but then it's just dropped off a cliff. And I get the feeling it's not going to be the last that we see of the 2018 class getting chopped this offseason. I fear for Deshaun Hand a lot now. I think he's probably going to get the same treatment, possibly, especially with all the picks we've made at defensive tackle on that D line. But in Kerryon's case, it is really sad. We were all rooting for him. We all wanted him to break out and do well, but it just never happened. And after last year, he was healthy all year and his competition was a rookie and a 36-year-old Adrian Peterson. And if you can't work your way into the team with that as your competition, the writing is a bit on the wall there. And I feel we'll talk about it later when we're doing the rest of the roster, but I feel like we can replace him, maybe not to the great degree of blocking that he has now, but relatively well enough to mean that this decision was easy to make. But yeah, it's still sad.
Yeah, it is. I remember I think it was his rookie season, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry and led all NFL running backs with that stat. So after the rookie year, it was like, oh my God, we've solved the problem. And then one injury, and that does for you. And I don't think he's ever going to rid himself of that knee brace being a feature of his life now. And He is a confidence player, and I think he lost his confidence. But in terms of a culture guy, in terms of a fun guy to be around, he was always that. And so we wish him the best in Philadelphia. That'll be, I think that's a good landing spot for him. Hopefully, he gets some more meaningful reps there. I was actually meant to start on the sad note, actually, of I can't remember his name now. Tariq Cohen's,
Tariq Cohen.
yeah, his younger brother. So he sadly died a couple of days ago, and in some really tragic circumstances. And just our hearts go out to Tariq and his family, who are obviously going through it. That's a terrible thing, and that comes in as well with another younger brother of someone who's just been drafted, died a couple of days ago as well. But I can't remember who that was. I think it was Sam Ellinger. Was it?
Sam Erlinger's little brother, 17.
It's
Tragic.
awful. Yeah, absolutely. So hearts go out to the families of those guys there. Right. Let's move on with the second bit of news, and that is our new tight end Josh Hill has retired. He's realised what an organisation we are early doors. He's said, you know what, I'm off, mate. He was aligned for 7 weeks. He didn't see any snaps. But he's had a 7-year career with the Saints, and I don't know about you, man, but I was really excited to have him here. It felt like if the running game was going to be a big threat, a blocking tight end who did that in an elite way that the Saints had described as someone that they build the scheme around is a big loss to us not coming here. He wouldn't have been one of the bigger names on the roster in terms of recognition, but in terms of impact, I think he was going to do big things here.
Well, he was going to be the 6th O-lineman, basically, wasn't he? He is in there to block. That is his job. And like you say, when we're going to be running a scheme like we are this year, that's going to be heavily based on the run, you need a good blocking tight end. And plus, it would have freed up TJ to resume his more attacking role, because he's going to be needed a lot in the passing game this year. So it is a bit of a blow. I don't know, reading between the lines, it looks like a family thing, maybe not wanting to uproot the family all the way across the country coming up here. And plus, I know he's had concussion injuries in the past as well. And it's a shame, actually, because it leaves a hole there. So, we don't really have a per se big blocking tight end at the minute. So we're going to go and need to find one before the season starts.
Yeah, and to that point, before we found out about Josh Hill, we did see that Darren Fells came in for a visit, and then subsequently, after Josh Hill was confirmed, Fells was re-signed almost immediately afterwards. Former Lion, he played for us in 2017. He's joined on a 1-year deal. I think we broke that actually when we were talking last week, or at least that he was visiting us, which came as a bit of a shock. But just to talk on it a bit more, I was listening to some other Detroit podcasts. I can't remember exactly which one, but I think it was probably the Pride of Detroit podcast. And they were saying about how he produced really well here, and the Lions wanted to return him, and he made it clear privately that in no uncertain terms was he interested in coming back, that he didn't enjoy playing for the team. And it was pointed out that, there's an indictment on the previous regime, but also for someone that had such bad feelings about playing here, that it really is good signs about the sort of culture that the new guys are bringing here, that players are willing to overlook what they might have seen in the past here and really look to the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting signing for sure. And I think they must have had it lined up a little while, because it was abnormally fast after the Hill news that we did snap him up. So, I mean, I don't know what his role is here, though. I mean, I guess, are we going to utilize him as the blocking guy? Because I feel like Fells is I feel like he's more of a pass threat than a blocking guy. So I don't know. It remains to be seen how we use him. Possibly I know he's good as a red zone threat, so maybe we use him there. But again, TJ is as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's utilized, because Hill had his spot on the roster. He had his job there. I'm not sure what they're going to be asking Fells to do.
I think he's a better blocker than people give him credit for, but he's definitely more of a receiving threat than he is a blocker. I definitely agree with you. Ashley's made a good point in the chat as well about famous deaths recently, and Colt Brennan died today, age 37, former Hawaii quarterback and Heisman Trophy finalist as well. So that's really sad too. In terms of signings, the Lions have also signed undrafted free agent safety Nick Pickett from Oregon. So obviously he's a teammate of Sewell's. He doesn't have the highest of RAS scores, but apparently his intelligence more than makes up for that. He can put himself in the right places in the backfield to be effective despite a lack of athleticism. That now brings us to 87 players on the roster. What do you know about Nick? And
Not a great deal, not gonna lie. He's one to be honest, I forgot we'd made the signing, to be fair, but I've seen a little bit of Oregon, but that was only in the Ducks Beavers game last year, and both defenses were pretty tragic that day. So, but yeah, I don't really have much to add at this point. He's one I'm going to have to watch tape on, but I've been watching more tape on the draft guys so far, and some of my favorite UDFAs. So we'll get there eventually, though.
We will get there, but let's first talk about the man for which the podcast is named tonight. The end is coming. It's Ragnow-rok time, and he's
I'm
signed
proud
up.
of that one.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. I liked it too. Well done, man. On that. You can keep going with the naming. He's signed a 4-year contract extension. We already had him for 1 year and the option, so that makes it 6 years now. 6 seasons. He'll be with us through 2026, and once he's on to the 4-year extension in a couple of years' time, he'll be on $13.5 million a year. That makes him the highest paid centre in the league at the moment. He was PFF's third-ranked centre in 2020, and it's an expensive deal, but we all kind of knew that this was coming, and I feel like Lions fans are universally pleased about this. How about you?
I think it was a no-brainer. I mean, you've got to build your trenches up, and for that, you need a reliable centre. You've seen with teams who don't have good ones just how bad things can be. And I know his pick back in 2018 wasn't universally popular, especially for a first round, but I think he's proved his weight in gold as to how good he is. And you just saw him last year. I mean, what kind of dude plays to a fractured throat for a full game against Kenny Clark, no less, who's one of the best nose tackles in the entire NFL, if not the best guy? You're going one-on-one with him every single snap with a fractured throat, and you still don't give up a sack, a hurry, a pressure, anything. I mean, that just shows how good a guy he is. And now you've got your tackle situation sorted. You've got Jonah Jackson, and you just need to solidify your line, and that's now solidified for the next half a decade, the main positions. And I think his contract's a good value on 13.5. As you said, I mean, the salary cap's going to go up massively in the next 5 years. By the end of that contract, he'll be lucky if he's probably top 10 at his position. You know, the wages are just going to go up and up and up, and we've got him locked in for 6 years now, so we don't have to renegotiate. I think it's a good price, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him carry on what he is, because he's just an absolute beast, and no defensive tackle can get the best of him. So yeah. It's a great decision.
I think centre's one of those positions that's criminally underrated, because when he signed it, all the Lions fans loved it, but you did see some critics from other teams talking about how, the Lions are overpaying for one of the most replaceable positions in football. And it's like, okay, maybe there are a dearth of centres out there available for $4 to $5 million a year. You can do it cheaper. But have a look at the difference in production, especially when the Aaron Donalds of the world are around. You know, you need someone who can do that. But also, the number of bad snaps last year in the NFL rose massively. I have no stats to back this up. It's only anecdotal, but I can remember bad snaps all the time, and Ragnow does not make mistakes. And Jared Goff is going to absolutely love Frank. Did you see the presser that he had as well?
I've seen snippets. I've not seen the entire thing. I do understand it was quite an emotional affair when he was chatting there. But I mean, I already love him, so I probably wouldn't be able to love him anymore now. I mean, he's the guy who sets the center's the guy who sets the tone, and you need a good center to set the tone for you. And we've got the best there is. I think he's probably second best in the league right now, and he'll be first very soon. And you need that position setting up, because like you say, there were a lot of bad snaps last year that messed plays up, that messed drives up. You've got to have that professionalism there, and you need to protect Goff. You need to protect your running game, and he's going to do that. So it's absolutely not an overpayment, and the only people saying that are probably Packers, Vikings, and Bears fans, because they realise that he's going to run all over them for the next 6 years, and they didn't want him to stay.
Yeah. Ashley's just said in the chat that, you know, one of the most important positions on the O-line, since they do a lot of blitz pickup, which is an underrated trait. I mean, effectively, you know, your center's the quarterback of the O-line, isn't he? So he needs to be
But I mean, in our position as well, you've got a rookie on one side and you've got a position that's on the other in guard that's, you know, all over the place. You need that steadying presence there. as well to keep the line together. It's all right having the tackles there, but if you've got nose tackles bursting through the middle, through these guards, you see lots of examples of him double teaming up with the guards to keep guys out. And it's that experience he has that makes those guards better, even if at the minute they're not in the best position.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you don't know if you can love him more. You definitely will. You must watch that video. It's not very long. I think it's 10 minutes, if that. But, oh man, I was in bits. I was honestly in bits. And then I remembered that I watched it about an hour later. And my girlfriend came and said, "You're right, is something wrong?" And I was like, "I've just remembered Frank." It was really weird. It makes me properly emotional. I'm not lost any of my parents yet, fortunately, but fuck, if it feels like that, it's man, yeah. Right, let's move on. 3 of the scouts have left the Lions after the draft. Collegiate scouting director Ron Miles, alongside scouts Chuck Brenzinger and Jay Morocco. We obviously know that the scouts' contracts don't run the same way as the players' contracts do. All the scouts are signed through the draft, and I think they expire the day after the draft concludes, so on the Sunday or the Monday. We knew that the new regime would probably want to bring their own guys in. We knew that it probably wouldn't happen before the draft because the process was already in place. It looks like the scouts have done a terrific job, to be honest, and I expected more turnover here. So, collegiate scouting director is a big one. But generally speaking, it's less than I expected. How about you?
To be honest, I'm not really sure it's going. Like you say, there's been loads of movement over the league at the minute, especially with so many new GMs and head coaches in. So I think it's one of those things we're going to have to really wait and see to see what the effect is there. But I think they've done a cracking job this year. The amount of pro days they went to, the amount of scouting that they've done, there's been very solid reasoning behind why they've picked the guys they have, and they seem to have struck on quite a few of the good undrafted free agents as well. So all I can do is commend them on a really good job this year, and we'll see next year as to what the level of scouting's like. But we have a lot of scout guys at the top anyhow. You've got Dorsey in there who's a scout. You've got Holmes in there who's a scout. There's a lot of guys at the top who are going to have a lot of influence as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Ray Agnew as well, obviously another one who's
yeah. There's so many guys in that war room to make the pick. So it'll be interesting to see whether they have less guys this year and a bit more goes on to Agnew and Dorsey and the likes. But
yeah, I do wonder with Dorsey whether he's a one-year wonder. He spent 1 year in his previous place. He's been jumping around the league since his GMship at the Browns ended as some sort of short-term consultant almost for like rookie regimes to kind of lean on his experience. And he's someone I'd actually like to keep in the room because I feel like him and Holmes kind of balance each other out quite well. All this chat about Holmes wanting to aggressively move up for the guys he was really sold on and being talked out of it by people in the room. And part of me thinks that Dorsey was probably a large part of that.
It's funny you mentioned that because obviously I've seen over the last few days the stuff coming out about offers been made for 7 as well. And a lot of people are jumping on Holmes for not taking those offers because people like to stack draft picks instead. What's your view on this? Because I look at it and I think, I know Sewell wasn't my guy and I didn't want him to, but if he's sat there, I think even if you've been offered just like an extra third or something to move down some, the value's there taking him, not going back. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of the critical people come out already trying to poke holes in Holmes, even when he's not done anything. I feel it's unfair criticism, but I don't know what you think about that.
I like the idea in principle of stacking picks because in a rebuild, you would like as many fresh faces as possible. I just think that's a truism. If you've got a load of guys who, because of the previous regime, don't have a lot of upside in the new scheme, trying to roll them over as quickly as you can gives the potential for the team to turn around more quickly. But it depends on what the deal is, right? I think if you have a look at where we are at 7 and the next 3 picks out, let's take the next 12 picks out. There's probably 2 that you can point at that were value at those positions, and that's Fields at 11 and Parsons at 12. And beyond that, all of the guys are going about where they should, or they're a bit of a reach. JC Horn at 8 versus Saul at 7. It's like, hello, there's a massive difference there. Horn's a good player, but low floor, high ceiling. Saul is going to come in and play well from the start. I don't think he's going to live up to the billing of being this generational guy year one. But
oh no,
excuse me. But I do think that he's going to have a good year. And it depends on the deal, right? If it's Baltimore coming in with their 2 first rounders and a third all this year, I think you'd be hard pressed to turn that down, because at the end of the day, Saul could bust. Saul could bust. And you get 2 first rounders in there and a third, more swings, more chance of them being successful. So, but, you know, if someone like the Patriots is saying, I'll give you 15 and 46, no, I'll take 7, thanks. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. There was just something in the way it was done. It was like this was the first real concentrated attack on Holmes as to, you know, his strategy and how he's going to do in the job. Like people saying he's devoted to players and he shouldn't be, and I feel that's wrong. I feel like he knows. I feel like he knows his players and their value, and he will weigh it against any transfer value that's, you know, given. So I don't think he's going to have traded down. I don't think he's going to have rejected something stupidly, you know, big, if he has been offered multiple ones. So yeah, I don't know. I just felt it was like, you know, it's the first time I've really seen people have a go at him, and I think it was unwarranted.
I think people can have a go at him for various reasons. One, they didn't want him in the first place. That's not going to rely on anything that he's done. It's just they're not the guy you wanted. And, you know, I can kind of go with that. Whatever. If you didn't want him, fine. But if you were someone that's a wait and see, but you're a same old Lions sort of guy, as soon as something happens, you've got something to criticise. So I just think that's what it was. Something happened, and they found fault with it. Fine. That's okay. I'm not going to particularly take much notice of that. You know, Lions Facebook is awash with people who have no idea what they're talking about. So, fine. You go for that. Let's move on. I don't want to waste any time with these fools. Dan Campbell had a presser and revealed a couple of different things. The first of which is that Derek Barnes' number is 55 and he's going to play at the mic, which is interesting in itself. But also he confirmed that the Lions will play a base 3-4 defense. What do you feel, man? It felt like to me that Barnes didn't suit Mike in year one, but perhaps transition there. So it's interesting they're kind of shoehorning him in there straight off. You've probably watched a bit more tape of him than I have, but also fitting into that 3-4.
You'll have to forgive me on the linebacker terminology because I'm still picking that up currently. But I think in terms of the actual 3-4 itself, I think if Barnes is involved, I think that's the right system to use because he is a guy who he gets into the backfield. He gets his angles right. He's got elite speed to take advantage of the gaps. And if you're playing 3, you're playing with a nose tackle. You're playing with McNeil. For me, I'd be putting him straight in there as nose tackle. And the guy is a mauler. He can create running lanes. He's not there to get sacks. He's not there to do the fancy stuff. He's there to create the lanes for guys like Barnes to go through. And if Barnes is allowed to blitz and to do what he's best at, I think we're going to see him pick up a hell of a lot of sacks and tackles for loss. So I'm actually quite excited about that. I think the only other thing for me is, you know, 3-4, who are going to play defensive tackles because we have a wealth of them. You will assume Brockers is in there. But then, you know, I do want to see Levi play as well. But, you know, I don't know whether it's a thing we can rotate them in and out, do lots of different things, but I would like to see both the rookies start. But if we're playing 3-4, I want to see McNeil start first. Brockers, I don't know. We've just got so many there, really, don't we? But
We do. And I think there's going to be a lot of rotation. But I think what's interesting is I think that there's a lot of our defensive tackles are multiple. I think with McNeil's athleticism, I definitely think he can play 3-tech, and I don't think that's being spoken about enough. But he's fast enough and agile enough to not play nose.
yeah, it's not a knock on him, but I wouldn't want to play him there. It's just like I don't want Levi to play at nose. because he's not good when he's playing that zero tech role. He needs to be a 3 or a 5 tech, the guy who gets in the gaps and is the disruptor. At the same way, I think McNeil, the way he bullies people, he's suited to bin a nose tackle and in that role. So, I mean, obviously, at worst, he's a 2i and a 4-3, but we're doing 3-4. So,
yeah. I think for me, the thing that I'm trying to push there is not that I think he should play at 3. That's not what I mean. I mean, I want the offense to not to know what we're doing when we're running out on the field. So the idea of there being misdirection in there, and I think you can line up Brockers in multiple locations. You can line up Flowers on the end or on that DT role.
Yeah.
You can put Aquara as the DT or the end in that role. In the 3-4, lots of the guys can play in lots of the different positions. The same with the linebackers as well. Collins and Barnes could play at the Mike or at the Leo role, or on that edge and blitzing, or dropping back into coverage. There's lots of different positions these guys can play in.
There is, but I think also at your 5 areas, you've got Harris. You've got Strong who's in there as well. You've got a lot of guys who can play out that. I feel with McNeil, you play to his strengths, and his strengths has been on that nose, stuffing the run, and creating rushing lanes for the edges and the linebackers. And I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing this. If it gets a bit closer to the season and they say he's ready to start, I'd be willing to put money on Barnes getting a lot of sacks this year or tackles for loss if they give him a start as well. I think it's going to work out really well, him, and I hope. Well, we'll talk about the linebackers later because that's whole conversation we've got going on. So
we will get to that later. All right, let's move on. And the off-season calendar has now been confirmed. Rookie minicamp is only 3 days away, 14th to the 16th of May. There was fears that it wouldn't go ahead with the Tom Brady-led Players Association attempted boycott of these things to make them virtual, but as so far, all of the rookie minicamps have been 100% attended across the league, and I'm hoping that will continue because if rookie minicamp doesn't happen, that's going to suit the veterans. And what do the veterans have at the Lions? Well, not good experience at winning. So let's get those rookies in. The rest of the off-season program, OTAs are 25th to 27th of May, June 2nd to 4th, and 14th to 17th. Mandatory minicamp is in the middle of those, 2nd and 3rd of the OTAs, June 8th to the 10th. Football's happening soon, man. We might be able to actually find out a bit more about our rookies being in camp.
Well, it's not just the rookies this year, is it? I mean, last year's didn't have any of this either. And when you look at guys like Cornell and Okuda, who didn't play a great deal last year because of injury, I think, they're probably going to need the mini camps just to be able to adjust up and learn a bit anyhow. So I think it's just beneficial to catch up last year's lot and, educate this year's lot as well.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
hopefully it does go ahead. I can understand why they're wanting to boycott it because obviously if they get injured, they're not getting paid for it. It's not really a fair system for them and they need to come to a compromise to be able to do so. But the Lions, more than anyone, need this off-season. They need it badly, especially with a new coach and a new GM here and 2 years worth of rookies to try and integrate in properly.
Yeah, completely agree. Right, last bit of news coming up. Media sessions have been taking place extensively in the last week. Goff and Okuda particularly struck me. Goff spoke about what it was like what he was being told pre-draft about what was going to happen. He was assured that they probably weren't going to be taking a quarterback. Talked about preseason workouts, whether he's been able to connect with some of the guys and how that's been, and about the playbook, how much impact he's had on that, how much he's talked to the coaches and that sort of thing. Okuda then spoke and he hinted that he feels like he's developed a lot more already than since last year, with only a couple of conversations that he's actually learning, which was a damning indictment on the previous regime and seemed very calculated in his remarks. He didn't blurt it out. It was a thoughtful comment on the Quinn Tricia era, I think, that they weren't coaching their players.
Yeah, it's unbelievable some of the stuff you're hearing coming out about how the culture used to be and what used to go on. It really is damning over what went on before. And as we've all been saying, we hope that Okuda can follow the same path that TJ did the year before, because basically they both had the same rookie year, whereas they started off, played disappointing, then got injured, and then ended the season on a low. And everyone was saying, "Oh my God, they're a bust. You've drafted them too high, etc." But hopefully, he follows the path taken by his predecessor, and this time next year he's in a Pro Bowl. So I think he's definitely going to improve. I think having the off season, I think having preseason games is going to help a lot. And I think his experience last year it's not going to have been nice, but it's character building.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. The guys at Ohio State are not used to losing, and at the end of the day, losing builds character.
yeah, and it's trial by fire. TJ went away last summer, started training with Kittle, started doing everything he could to make himself better, and it was that kind of commitment you want to see. So if he's doing similar, then again, hopefully we're going to see sort of a renaissance like we did with him. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again, and hopefully the doubters are going to be a lot quieter this time in 12 months, because I think a lot of the criticism was unfair. He was thrown into a team last year. His pros weren't helping him at all. They were rubbish. The scheme wasn't helping him. It was rubbish. He was playing against some of the league's best receivers. It's a recipe for disaster, that is.
Never mind not getting any pass rush, which means the scheme. I know I said the scheme doesn't help him and it's rubbish, but further to that, with slow linebackers not giving you cover and with no pass rush up front, you're going to fail. Like, there's no room for success at all. You had to fail.
No, you're on a hide into nothing. And it's a shame because we've got two really talented corners at the minute who we need to develop and who could become vital cogs of this defense going forward. So hopefully, with a better D-line this year, we're going to see a lot better from them. But just shifting to the one guy you mentioned before, and obviously you mentioned Goff as well and how he is acclimatized. I feel like I've taken to Goff quite quickly, but I think it's more to do with everyone absolutely, trying to rain on his parade, rubbishing him, talking him down, how rubbish he is. I mean, that deluded Bears fan who did his quarterback list and put Kellen Mond as better than him and had Jared Goff right at the very bottom. You're just like,
yeah, that's
mate, what the hell are you smoking? I know you're a Bears fan and you know nothing about football, but it's just things like that. I'm thinking, you know what, this isn't fair. McVay needs to take a lot more blame for what he did in LA. A lot more. It's not fair that Goff gets blamed for absolutely everything. At the end of the day, he's been to a Super Bowl. He can do it again if in the right system. And everyone's just trying to rain down on him. And I really, really damn well hope he succeeds. I want to see a lot of people shut up about this.
I think he'll show out, at least to begin with. Goff is one of the bigger confidence players that I can see out there. When things are going well, he looks unbeatable. When things are going badly, I do not see him turning it around. I think that he holds up fine himself, but I don't see him as a particularly inspirational kind of captain sort of figure. So I think he needs things to be going well, but I think that O-line sets him up for success pretty nicely.
And I feel like we've made the signings on the line for him as well. We've got two good tight ends, receiving tight ends who he'll love to throw to. And with St. Brown, he's a guy who gets separation really quickly so he can get the pass out to him quick. He wants guys who are in space quickly so he's not against pressure.
Yeah.
And I think he'll love St. Brown as well for that. So I think we've given him the tools to at least do relatively well in his first year if he takes the opportunity.
Yeah, completely agree. Right, that's the end of the news. It's time to move on to our main segment, which is talking about the roster as a whole. So we're going to go through position by position, just talking about the state of it, if we'd like to see improvement, where we think the rankings are going to be, perhaps whether they're going to make the roster or not, any sort of general comments on where we are. And we're going to start at quarterback, and I'm going to start with you, Ant. We've got Jared Goff, Tim Boyle, and David Blau. What do you think?
You know what? I like the makeup of the room. I think the decision to not draft a quarterback was the right one. When you invest in Goff, especially the money we're paying him, and the fact that Holmes apparently wanted him here, you've got to give him a year when you go out and say, right, I trust you. You're our guy. Here's your opportunity. You're going to get a fair shot at it. So I'm glad that Goff is the guy who's in there, who's been given his chance. So I wouldn't really have done it any differently. And, we've got adequate backups. I like Tim Boyle, the laser show. I think he'll do fine. I mean, the amount of praise he got from Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers rarely talks about his QB backups there, but he really spoke highly about him and, the effect he had prepping him on match days. It's all those little things that he'll do well as the second quarterback. So I feel like he's a good foil to have there. And Blau's played games before, so if it comes to the absolute worst, we've got a guy who's started and I don't think we're going to be making the playoffs this year, so I don't think it's going to affect us too much if we do have to insert him in for a game or two. So, yeah, I'm happy with the quarterback room this year. We're going to give Goff his chance. Let's revisit this in 10 months' time if he's not done well next season, and we'll try again.
Yeah, I no argument from me. I do think that Boyle has got a reasonably good ceiling, actually. I think that he is someone who could come in and perform at a fairly high level. Like you said, you don't have someone like Aaron Rodgers come in with the sort of praise for him that you have seen him have for others. So that's pretty encouraging. And Blau, I'm actually a big fan of. I think he came in that 2019 season when Stafford went down and played his heart out and gave us a chance. I mean, we didn't win a game with him under center, but we were never out of those games. It wasn't your typical team that's given up because a quarterback has gone down. He gave us a fighting chance with his arm and with his legs. So I'm really happy with him as quarterback 3. Do you see them all making the roster, or do you think we'll carry 2?
I feel like we'll put Blau and protect him on the practice squad as we always do. I feel like Boyle's your number 2, and I think that's the right decision. And then I think we'll either carry Blau or we will take him as a third guy, because I know we are a few roster spots short at the minute. So, I mean, it could be an option, but I feel like he'll go into the practice squad and we'll just continually protect him for as much as we can, just like last year.
I think he'll make the roster. For the simple reason he went onto the practice squad before and then the Cowboys were sniffing around him. I think that around the league he is viewed as a viable backup option. So I either think he'll make the roster or I think he'll be signed away. I think if he hits the practice squad, I think he'll be gone. So
I don't think I'd be as fussed about losing him last year as this year was last, because I just, I hated Chase Daniel last year, something fierce. If he does go, I'm happy with Boyle being the backup for now. So I'm not as fussed, because it's his last year as well, I believe, on his deal. So if he's got a chance to go and be a starter somewhere or a backup who sees a bit more action, then let him go. But obviously try first. But I wouldn't be giving him a roster spot just specifically to keep him. I feel like that we're past there now, and I feel like, we'll probably invest in QB next year. Yep. If it doesn't go well this year. So I don't see him in the future, so I don't see any reason to keep him around unnecessarily.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Right, running backs, and I'll take this one. We have got DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, Jamar Jefferson, it is Rakeem Boyd, and Dedrick Mills, the 2 UDFAs. And for me, you've got a very clear hierarchy here. I think that 3 are going to make the roster, ignoring the fullbacks. And at the moment, Swift, Williams, and Jefferson are right up there with those 3 for me, and in that order. I do think that Williams is being underrated, actually, by some people saying, oh, he's one of the best backups in the league. And it's like, actually, no, I think he's probably one of the mid-range starters in this league. I think he is a 1B running back. And I think that actually you might see them both on the field quite often, whether it's in 21 personnel, whether it's in 22 personnel, or whether it's splitting one out on as a wide receiver and having one as a running back. I think you're going to see a lot of that. Jamar Jefferson, I think, will probably end up being the one who makes the roster. I really enjoyed watching the little parts of tape that I've seen of him. I can see a lot of Le'Veon Bell in him in terms of the hesitation and the vision in the field. Mainly not the breakout speed at the back end, but I can see him being a really important piece. Running back 3 sees quite a lot of snaps, actually. So if he can get his pass blocking up to scratch, I can definitely see him making the roster. I think it's an uphill battle for the other 2, the undrafted free agents. We could run with 4 running backs. I'm not really sure which one of the 2 I'd take. I haven't seen enough of them yet. I want to go through camps and see what comes out of there first. Your thoughts on the running backs, then?
Jamal Williams can beat out DeAndre Swift for the starting job, if he so chooses. He has 3,000 scrimmage yards at Green Bay, and that was as a clear second. He's got 2,000 running yards, 1,000 receiving yards. As a dual threat on his day, he is a running back one. And if he impresses in camp, it would not surprise me if Swift wasn't starting running back first day of the season, and I'd be all right with that.
You mean Williams be started?
Williams, sorry, yeah. I think Williams can start day one, and if he does, I wouldn't be worried about that. I don't think it's an indictment on Swift. I just think Williams can be that good. He's played behind a master back for 4 years, but he's still got really good stats, and he offers you so much. Like you say, he can, he's a good runner. He's a good running back. He's a good receiver. His blocking's decent. So
his blocking is elite. He's second or third, I think, beyond Kerryon. So, yeah, he's right up there.
So in terms of the depth we've got, I really like it with Swift and Williams. We can do so much with them. Swift can line up in the slot. Williams is probably the better dual threat back, but, they both have, I think Swift's going to be a bell cow, does a lot of the strength work, a lot of the hustle bustle, like Peterson did last year. I think Williams does a lot of your gadget work. And I think Jefferson's going to get onto the team. I've been watching his tape again today. I watched some before the show last week, and I've been watching more. I've been watching all the highlights of the Beavers season last year, and I really like what I see with Jefferson. I mean, out of all the notes I've put down in the games I've watched, the one that keeps coming up constantly is he finds his gaps. And I know that sounds stupid for a running back. That's what they're meant to do, but it's his vision. He reads his O-line. He sees where the gaps are coming, and he goes for them. Not a lot of running backs have the innate ability to work out where the gaps are going to be before they are there. And that's what he can do. His vision allows him this. He can bounce off guys pretty well, keeps going. He's a really tough runner. I mean, in some of the games I've seen, he's scored touchdowns where he's taken 2-3 guys over the line with him because he runs tough. But for me, if there's going to be a position for him on here, he's my third down blocking back to start with, because I think his blocking is very good. I think he was in a lot of unfavourable positions with the Beavers last year because their defence was horrible and they were often at times 2 or 3 scores down. And it's a lot harder as a running back to block when you're getting blitzed every play, because that's just what the opposition's doing. They're sending the house at you. It's harder to run, but yet still he was able to make yards. We see a lot in the NFL when teams are 2 or 3 scores down, running backs having no effect on a game. At the collegiate level, he was still able to have an effect. So that just shows that he has innate ability there. And I like what I see with him. So for me, I'm using him as the carry-on role to start with, and we'll see how he does. And then maybe increase his reps a little bit. I agree with you. He's not got the elite speed, the breakaway speed, but in your short yardage situations, in your pass blocking situations, I think he's good to go now. And he'll give us something on this team. But again, I'm with you on the 2 backup guys. I think we'll keep one or both on the practice squad. I'd like to see maybe Rakeem Boyd given a go. He's maybe not got a lot of versatility to his game. He's one who runs the gut and just churns out loads of yards if given the opportunity. And obviously that doesn't happen as much as the NFL level. But I think out of him and Dedrick Mills, he's probably got the better chance of the 2 of them. But I'd like to see one of them on the practice squad at least. But for me, the running back room's really healthy. Really, really healthy.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. And just on, well, Ashley submitted a question ahead of time, but he's also talking in the chat too. So I'll just say that he said initially, who do you see taking the RB3 spot now KJ is gone? Is it one of the
Jefferson.
rookies, or will they sign someone off the street? And then when in response to what you've been saying about the number 1, number 2, 1A, 1B running backs that we've got, he says it makes sense considering New Orleans' 2-back system, e.g. Ingram and Kamara, and the Rams, he's in 3 to 4 packs, Henderson, Brown, Akers. And then about vision, he said Saquon has really bad vision considering how good of a back he is. And actually, Kerryon, that was one of his flaws, was that he didn't see the gaps particularly well. For someone who had good speed and good elusiveness, kept running into the O-line.
Yeah, and that's something you can't teach. To his original question, I think Jefferson is the guy, and I won't be going out there getting anyone else. But if there's 2 games you want to look at the highlights of, look at their game against the Oregon, look at the Oregon State game, and look at the Oregon State Washington State game. You'll see a lot of examples of him using his vision, and he does have some agility in there to make big yards. I mean, in those two games combined, he totaled about 410 yards. And I know it's not the greatest opposition in the world, but still, you have to, you don't get easy yards at all.
No.
It still takes a lot to get them. And there's a lot he gives you. He's a good pass blocker. He's adequate with his catching. The shovel passes he's really good on as well. So he gives you gadget options as well. And he's good on special teams. So for me, you don't need to go and waste any more capital on a running back. I probably would go Williams first, actually, because I don't want to dump all this pressure on Swift this year. Everyone going, oh my God, he's going to go 1,500 yards. He's going to get all this. Let Williams take some of the load and, equal it out between him and Swift. Give them both equal amount of time to do what they do best. And I think you can find a way in which to utilize them all properly without giving one of them a ton of the load.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I do hear you. One of the things I'm most looking forward to actually is seeing Jefferson running off right tackle with Penei Sewell. Well, I know how to say his name and I've just said it wrong. Penei Sewell. Especially if it's a toss play out right with Sewell blocking and being able to see which gap's going to open up. I just think it's a combination which is going to succeed.
A lot of Jefferson's plays I've seen, he does use the tackle to bounce off. He just runs right next to them, and that's where he gets a lot of his gaps. So I agree with you there. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing. So I think low key, he's going to be a very good signing for us. And in 12 months, we'll have we'll have high esteem for him. He's not going to be massive, but for a guy who we've picked up in the 7th round, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. And I would be disappointed if he wasn't running back 3 going on to the roster this coming year.
Just addressing what I think on the RB3 spot, I'm happy running with Jefferson. But I don't think Boyd and Mills actually provide enough competition for that 3 spot. I wouldn't be against bringing in a vet at vet minimum, not guaranteeing any of that money. So if he doesn't work out, you cut him for minimal compensation and you bring him in as someone to really compete with him. Because we can see from San Francisco that some of these vet min guys come in and look like world beaters when you have a world-class play caller in there. And you know what? With an O-line like we've got, I think a lot of running backs could succeed. So getting someone in better than Boyd and Mills, I think, is a potential option, and I think that it might happen. There's going to be a lot of cuts coming in these next few weeks.
I don't know. I feel like for where we're at in our rebuild, I think we're better off giving Jefferson the chance to shine as running back 3. I think we stand to gain more from giving him the reps this year rather than just giving, a vet a 1-year deal and then moving on next year. I think the great thing with Kerryon, he was happy to be running back 3. He didn't protest. He didn't make any waves about it. And I think Jefferson will be the same. He will be happy to be a running back 3 who gets some good game time and provides you with solid depth. And I'd rather us develop that guy than just give it to a vet. Personally, for me,
I
think if we were looking at a playoff push, then I might agree with you that we just need a little bit of depth there. But I think where we're at now, give all the spare snaps to Jefferson and let him do his thing. Because, again, I think people are going to be surprised by how good he can be.
Yeah, definitely. Right. I'll start on the fullbacks as well, just because it's not a position we're going to speak too much on, then I'll give you outside wide receiver afterwards. So, friends of the pod, Jason Kabinda and Nick Borden. Nick Borden, I think, is one for the chop, and it's really sad. He was a draft pick in 2017? 18. 6th round? 7th round? Something like that. I don't know.
He was the last pick in that. He was the last pick. He was after Crosby, so I think it will either be 6th or 7th.
Yeah.
Probably 7th.
And I've really enjoyed watching him play, actually, in the first year, I think it was. He did quite well in his role. I think he's going to be an effective player in the league when he's healthy. But that's the important thing, isn't it? When he's healthy. And unfortunately for Nick, he hasn't had a run where he hasn't been on IR for some significant period of time. So it's sad to say, but I think he is going to be off. And Kabinda, some teams don't run with a fullback, some do. And he's not a natural fullback, and we talked about that before when he was on the podcast. He's a linebacker by trade. He's got the build of a fullback, and I think he played well there, and he brought special teams upside. I'd be gutted if he didn't make the roster. But I can see them taking extra running backs in favour of a fullback. It happens, so fingers crossed for our boy. But what do you think, man?
I think they'll stick with Kabinda for me. I think it just makes sense. He knows what his role is. He's good at what he does. Don't shake the apple cart on this one. I think, just keep it as. Because I mean, we don't use a fullback that often, really, do we? I mean, I don't know what the new system's going to be like, but if you're keeping guys like Boyd and Mills around, the running backs who can come in and do some of the halfback stuff, maybe, then I think that's fine. I think just keep him. I don't think he costs you that much, and I think he just does what you need him to do. And I think he'll be a Dan Campbell guy. He's a tough guy who will give what he needs to. He'll get the hard yards if he needs the odd carry, which he can do in short yard situations. So yeah, keep him. As for Borden, I think Borden will probably go, and that's just another nail in Quinn's coffin. I mean, I forgot to mention it when we were talking about Ragnow, but he is the first guy from the 2016, 17, or 18 drafts to make it to a pro deal. 3 drafts worth of players, and only 1 has made it to a pro deal. And looking at the rest of 2018, only Crosby looks relatively, close to getting another deal. Could be 1 guy in 3 years, which is such an indictment of the drafting.
Yeah, it really is. Right, let's move on to outside wide receiver, and your boys are Tyrell Williams, Brashad Perryman, Quintus Cephas, Geronimo Allison, Damian Ratley, Javon McKinley, Jonathan Adams Jr., and Sage Surratt. What are you feeling on this group?
Oh, God. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's like every guy in this unit's either on a prove-it deal or is a rookie, so obviously, I'm not going to say it's the most amazing group in the league. It's probably towards the bottom of the table currently. If some of these guys ball out and do well, then, we've got some serious guys on our hands here. But, yeah, we've got to wait and see with the receivers. Perryman and Williams could both be really good signings for us. And I'm quite looking forward, especially to seeing Perryman. I think he's flashed what he can do, and he's been on a very bad Jets team for a few years now, who've had no offensive line for Sam Darnold. Here, Goff's going to have a little bit more time to set himself in the pocket, set some of these deeper passes up, because we know he can deep pass, and I think him and Williams might benefit from it. So, I'd like to see them guys there. In terms of the rookies, I don't want to go anywhere near McKinley. He needs cutting yesterday. He offers nothing. He's too old. Just doesn't give anything to this team whatsoever. I want to see Jonathan Adams on the side. He's one of the rookies. He's one of the UDFAs who I really, really want to make it onto the roster. He's a human highlight reel. I know he's got game aspects of his games which he needs to improve because he's a UDFA and everything, but I see a lot in him, which he's an X factor guy. He can make contested catches that even Kenny Golladay couldn't. Kenny Golladay is probably one of the best contested pass catch guys there is. So I really want to see him. Sage Surratt, possibly. I'd probably maybe have him on the practice squad and bring him up as and when, because I think there's something there, but there's a lot that needs working on as well. And I think he's practice squad level at the moment. Cephas is obviously the big one. I think Cephas, we saw the flashes last year, and his 2 main things, he needs to improve his catching. He dropped a few, but we saw that get better as the year went on. I think he gets all right separation. He can make some damn good catches, and I think he's the guy to watch out for in that core. I think him and Perryman are the 2 if those 2 end up this season having really good years, I'd be really, really happy. Sign Perryman to a longer deal, still got Cephas for 3 years on his rookie deal. I think that'd be really good for us. So they're the 2 I'm really to stand out for this. But obviously, if we're talking about the state of the roster, it could be better at the minute. There could be more experience and better guys on there. But potential-wise, there's a hell of a lot. And if even half of it's realised, I think it's going to be hell of a good thing for the rebuild.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the epitome of a boom or bust group. I think that Williams and Perryman could be outstanding. I can see Williams, Perryman, and Adams being the 3. I really can. I think that Cephas's place on a roster, which is particularly weak, is under threat by some of these UDFAs. The amount of money that's been guaranteed to them the fact that Cephas didn't perform that well last year. He flashed, but actually he was criminally underused. He was healthy scratched a few times, and he had one big reception, which I'm going to remember very, very well for a long time, in the corner of the end zone from Stafford, because that was possibly the best touchdown of last year total, really, apart from the win in the dying embers of another game. But I think his place is under threat. I think that Adams, Surratt, and McKinley could push him. We'll see. I don't see any path on the roster for Geronimo Allison and Damian Ratley. I don't. I think they're done.
Oh, I was trying to think about who I'd forgotten about. I felt quite bad in a way, but I don't see Allison doing it. I think Allison was just a depth guy for last year, but he never really did anything in Green Bay. And I think in terms of the rebuild, the fit we're in at the minute, he just doesn't fit it. But I've seen enough from Cephas to know that he's got the skill set to succeed if he's coached properly and if he's utilized properly. So I would be very, very disappointed if he didn't make the roster or he was relegated to just a rotational guy who doesn't get that many snaps. But I guess with the formations we're running, if we're running a lot of two tight end sets, obviously receiver positions are going to be a little bit sparse to come by. So
yeah. All right, let's move on to the slot wide receivers. I should just mention, because of a comment from Ashley about whether they've been ranked as outside or slot wide receivers. We took the listings of these guys, I think, from an outside source, which from memory was SI. So some of them are going to fall in the cracks. Some of them can play the multiple positions. So obviously some of the slot guys can play outside and some of the outside guys can play slot. And perhaps some are slightly misranked. So Geronimo Allison is perhaps more of a slot guy, and Cephas is perhaps seen as more of a slot guy, but both can play outside. I've seen that happen. So maybe a slight misrankings, but bear with us for that. Slot wide receivers: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, Tom Kennedy, Victor Bolden. And for me, Amon-Ra is the only person in the slot worth his salt. Khalif Raymond has a few highlight reels on tape from his past years, but they are few and far between. I really think he's in there as a specialist return guy with a little bit of WR5 or 6 upside, much in the vein of what we've had in the past. Tom Kennedy, Victor Bolden, I will be shocked if they make the roster. I can see them being cut all together or making the practice squad once again. But how long do they stay there? They've been there for some time now. So St. Brown is someone where if he goes down, I do fear for this offense a bit. And
it depends, because we do have, you've got Swift and Williams who play slot as well. Swift proved a very adept slot receiver last year. Williams can play slot receiver. We've got guys who can cover there if necessary, but obviously Amon-Ra is the standout guy and needs to start straight away in the slot this year. His ability to create separation quickly is going to be, I've already said about it when talking about Goff earlier, he gets open quick. So if you're trying to avoid the pressure, he's the guy you're looking for every single time because he can make separation really quickly. And I really like his tape. I think he's got a lot to him. And I think he's going to be a lot better than his brother at Green Bay, for one. Equinemius hasn't really done that much at Green Bay, but I've got high hopes for him. And as he settles in and his snap count goes up and, he just needs to learn to run a little bit cleaner. But when those issues are sorted, we're going to have a really good slot receiver on our hands. And I think if he's the number one guy, and we've got Raymond, Swift, and Williams, and maybe Cephas doing a little bit backing up, I'm not overly concerned about the depth there, especially, again, positions out on the outside receiver core, maybe a little bit less sparse, a little bit more sparse than last year. So some guys may need some extra snaps elsewhere. So just send them into the slot instead. But I agree with Bolden and Kennedy. They were practice squad guys all last year, and I fully expect them to be the same again. So
yeah, I do think in terms of the wide receiver depth, are you worried in general, or are you happy to just run with it? I know you said you might bring someone in, but is it a worry to you?
No, because the amount of holes that needed filling on this team this year, we were never going to satisfy every positional group. We could have gone really big at receiver in the draft, and then we'd be worried about defensive tackle now, or we could have gone really big at linebacker, and now we'd be worried about the offensive line, for example. whichever way we went, there was always going to be places we were worried about. And for this year, given the boom or bust nature of it, yes, we've not been able to fix it with the experience like right away, but we have an opportunity to have fixed other areas and to strike gold in this area and get, like almost a little boost. If Williams and Perryman come up good and if Cephas progresses, actually we've sorted out another positional group without even, not saying without even trying, but we've got lucky with it. So I kind of enjoy that. And there's a couple of groups this year that we didn't necessarily upgrade in the draft, but I'm looking forward to seeing because we've made some astute signings. So it's intrigue with the receivers this year, I think is the word. I'm not worried. I'm intrigued to see how the guys will do.
The important thing for me in the draft was not reaching. And we didn't do that with Saul, and we didn't do that all the way down. And that meant not taking a receiver, because for me, it's not the way the board went. We could have taken Terrace Marshall at 41, maybe, but I didn't want him. It's not a receiver that I want here. In terms of how I see it going, I do not foresee anyone else coming in unless someone high profile is cut available for cheap. And, if that's true, why pick the Lions? I'm resigned to the fact that this team is not going to be good this year, but I am not resigned to the fact that they will not be competitive. And if you have a look at what Goff does well, he does well behind a solid offensive line, throwing to separation receivers. Williams, Perryman, and St. Brown, all separation receivers. Hockenson has one of the better separations of tight ends in the league too. So if you have a look at an offense that Goff can succeed in, it's this one. We are setting up to succeed for him. I really think that this offense can do something really special and come out of nowhere and be a dark horse. Now, the defense is going to be a work in progress. Even if this offense is really good, I don't see this team being particularly successful. But I've got hope with this team. This wide receiver core is not hopeless for me.
No, I agree. I don't think we reached in the draft. I've seen some people say we reached for the defensive tackles. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think we got a steal with McNeil, and I think we did all right with Levi. But what it does for you, we talk about the position of, could we have taken receivers and the value there? But the value in the two new defensive tackles we've got, if you get a receiver, then your receiver group becomes better. But if you get two good defensive tackles, not only does the defensive tackle position become better, but if you're getting more pressures on the quarterback, it improves your secondary as well. So it has more far-reaching consequences for the position we've picked at. We could see an increase in 2 or 3 positional groups just because of the tackles we got, whereas we wouldn't see the same with receivers. And in a rebuild, obviously, that's what we want. We want to try and address as many areas as we can.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I think, we'll get onto defensive tackles in a bit, but just for me, it's potentially the most important position on defense. And the reason why is because everyone seems to think that edge is the most productive position on the defense, that they're the ones that really put pressure on a quarterback. But at the end of the day, poor defensive tackles who have no pass rush upside means that teams can double team tackles, leave the guards and center one-on-one with the interior guys, and they're going to be pretty happy with that. Whereas if you have someone occupying the interior, you're leaving the edge guys one-on-one, and that is setting you up for success. That's the thing that really gives offenses something to worry about, is interior defensive pressure, because it makes the edge guys a lot more of a threat, which means that it gives the secondary a bit to react to the quarterback panicking rather than the quarterback being able to survey the field. It's not coming just from the edge. It comes initially from the interior. So that's my philosophy, and I love the fact that we double dipped on that. I do think a steal for McNeil is going to become a thing, though.
Oh, don't worry. I've got some planned. I've got the the McNeil Barnes Expressway planned, because McNeil's going to create the gaps, and Barnes is going to rush through them and start sacking quarterbacks at will. I've got some in the works. Don't worry.
Just trying to think of a rhyme for either Levi or Onzarike, but I'm not sure I'm going to get there with one.
Oh, I don't know. I had to, because I was doing Norse gods earlier. I thought about doing something like Levi and Loki with Norwegian, but I couldn't quite land on one. So I'll keep working on it.
We'll get by with Levi and we got a steal for McNeil.
We'll get round with Ragnarok. That is trademark, by the way. No one else can use that.
Yes. Right, let's move on to our next position group, and you're taking it up, and it's tight ends. We've got TJ Hawkinson, Darren Fells, Elias Mack, Hunter Thedford. We have then Hunter Bryant on the non-football injury list. I'm told that means he's going to be out for the first 6 weeks of the season. We've then got a couple of undrafted free agents in Brock Wright and Jake Houseman. How are you feeling on the tight ends?
See, before the Hill retirement, I would have told you I felt really comfortable. I thought TJ is the passing threat, the red zone guy, the mismatch guy, as Dan Campbell would put it, because he is a mismatch nightmare. Obviously, Hill's your blocking guy, and Hunter Bryant, before the injury, was obviously the promising rookie. But we do have a little bit of a conundrum now, because I think obviously Fells and Hawkinson are going to make the roster, but they're both more pass specialists for me. Now, I guess we have to look and see what we've got in the other guys. Thedford and Mack, I've seen little bits of them, and I've heard some good things about them, but I'm not really in a position to say whether they're going to have much of an effect on the roster at the minute. I think we need to be looking at getting another guy in, preferably a blocking guy, to go with Hawkinson and to go with Fells for me, because I think we need that sixth lineman. If we can find it in who we've got, then fine, but the UDFAs, I wouldn't hold out any hope for either of those. I don't think you'll ever hear of them again, apart from when it's said that they've been cut. The thing is, when you can't find tape on a player anywhere ever, that says something. It's very hard to see them doing much in the league. So it depends on if there's anything with Thedford and Mack. But again, I've not really seen enough. So we need someone else for me. But obviously Hawk's one of the best tight ends in the league. He's top 5 tight end in the league now for me. And he's only going to keep getting better. So, I'm quite happy with him. I'm happy enough with Fells. But I would really like a blocking specialist, especially the scheme we're going to be playing this year.
Yeah, I agree on the top 2 and your thoughts on bringing someone in. Hawkinson, for me, his ceiling is so high. I think he can be right up there. One thing for him that, he doesn't have that perhaps some of the more elite tight ends do have is that sort of high-end speed. He is not going to be someone who breaks away in the mold of like the very, very best tight ends. But in terms of being the most efficient blocking and receiving tight end to just be reliable and get you 10 yards every time you need it, he's going to be right up there with the best of them. So I can't wait to see what he can do.
Christ. Sorry, I've got a thunderstorm raging around here. It's bloody huge.
Darren Fells, I got a bit more on the blocking side, I think, than you do. I think he can definitely do that. So I'm a bit more relaxed on that. But if we do get a third, I'm not against that. I wouldn't be sleeping on one of the undrafted free agents, which is Brock Wright at Notre Dame. So he came out of high school as the number 2 ranked tight end in the country. 6'4", 255, so a little undersized, but supremely athletic. But he's suffered being behind some tight ends who actually got drafted quite highly, in Cole Kmet and Tommy Tremble at Notre Dame. Now, the fact that he didn't separate himself from those guys is a bit of a worry. But if you've got a tight end as your head coach, I think he's going to have a look at someone with the pure athleticism and willingness for blocking that he has, because he primarily played on special teams at Notre Dame. I think he's going to have a look at Wright and say, this is a guy that I can mould. I think he's got a good shot to make the roster ahead of any of the other guys for tight end 3 if you don't dip somewhere else.
See, I watched a fair few Notre Dame games last year, but I can't remember him. Nothing sticks out. It might just have been me not seeing it, but...
No, it wasn't you not seeing it. So he played 11 games in his rookie year, primarily as a special teamer, as a backup tight end. As a sophomore, he had 2 catches for 12 yards. As a junior, he had 2 catches for 45 yards. And in his junior year, he had 3 catches for 21 yards. He did not have many catches. But by all accounts, he's got reasonable hands and elite athleticism. So it does lead you to think, what's wrong with him? But at the same time, I don't see anything in my research to suggest that he's a bad locker room guy or anything like that. With the special teams upside that he provides, I can see a route to the roster for him. But with his tools, I think he can do it. And I think that if anyone's got the chops to make a transition to the NFL and suddenly look like our version of the Raiders tight end, whose name escapes me.
If he's in,
oh, God, what's his name?
if he's in, Waller?
Yeah, Waller. I think he could be Waller.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
That'd be a steal if you found him as a UDFA.
Well, I mean, Waller was a 6th rounder in himself. 5th rounder, 6th rounder.
That is true. But, I mean, if he's in the mould of, the Notre Dame tight ends like Tommy Tremble, because I did a lot on him before draft, he's an excellent blocker and he's been completely underutilized as a receiver. So if he's like a Tommy Tremble light, then I'd be more than happy having him on the team. We need a Tommy. You know what? We really need a Tommy Tremble right now, the 6th O-lineman who can also do stuff in the passing game for you. So if he's in that mold, then go for it. It's just because I've got no tape to go off.
No.
It's hard for me to make my judgment.
I've got a piece here that I'm just reading from 24/7 Sports talking about him. So it talks about the guys that have played ahead of him and, the number of catches he's had. But it goes on to say, above all that, and likely more importantly, very few people have been more well-liked, more respected, and greatly appreciated for their efforts to make everyone around him better than Wright. His leadership skills and work ethic are matched by very few. That describes to me the perfect culture guy that these guys are going to be looking for. Add to that the tools, I think he can be coached.
If he's got the tools, then fine, but I wouldn't be just hiring him for his culture alone. That would obviously be a big mistake. So yeah, with these tight ends, we need someone else if one of these rookies doesn't stand up. I think that's the overriding thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot was made about Mac at the end of last year, because didn't Mac get some game time, if I'm not mistaken? I feel like at least Mac got a little bit of game time.
You may well be right.
Well regarded, so we'll see anyhow. We'll see with the tight ends.
Yeah, right. It is my turn then to go for the O-line, and bear with me while I actually bring it up. Okay, we have, and I'm just going to read out the surnames because there's a few of them. Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, Vitae, Sewell, Crosby, Nelson, Skipper, Stenberg, Kramer, Brown, Jackson, and Payne. In terms of our starters, at the present moment, I do see it as Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, Vitae, Sewell. I don't want to give Vitae the nod because of the amount of money that he's being paid, but I think he will get the nod at the current time. I think that you could easily switch him out for Crosby and no one would blink. And you know what? I hope Crosby gets it. I really do, because I prefer him. I just like the guy. So, he deserves it with the play that he's had recently. And what a swing tackle to have. In terms of whether I think any of the other guys can be unseated, no, I think that's locked in for now. The people that can play behind him, Nelson, I think, is a terrific tackle prospect, considering he's only played for a couple of seasons in the position, so I'm very comfortable with him being on there. Dan Skipper, I do worry about his position on the roster and whether he's actually going to find a way on. Stenberg, I worry with Stenberg because of Kramer. Stenberg I really liked coming out, but Kramer, I think, actually has the potential to be the best pure right guard we have on the roster right now. In terms of UDFA pickups, he was one of the most highly rated out there, and he is lowly rated because he doesn't have any positional flexibility. He is a right guard, he's not a centre, he's not a left guard, he's a right guard. And, people don't like the fact that you can't move him around. But in terms of his ability to actually play, it's all there for him. So I can see a route to the roster for him. Obviously, we had Brown, Jackson, Heim. I think that I do like Jackson. I think that was a good pickup. But I'm not sure that they're going to potentially make the roster. So we'll see. Anyway, Ant, how do you see the O-line?
We needed depth. We got depth. I think we've got solid starters in 4 positions. We've got a variety of options at the 5th. But the thing Sewell did when he arrived here is all of a sudden the tackle depth went from Nelson to Crosby, which is a huge increase. As much as I don't want Crosby to be the backup, he is a high-level backup who will do really well in absentum of either Decker or Sewell. I mean, obviously, if Decker goes down, Sewell switches, Crosby stays at right. So, we've got good depth. We've got options. I agree. I don't want Vaitai in as guard. Out of Vaitai and Crosby, one worked really hard last year and one didn't do really well last year. And the one who didn't do really well last year stands to benefit from this offseason, which isn't right. And I don't agree with it at all. But I don't really want to put Crosby in at guard. I want him to do well this year, and shifting him out of position, I feel, just hinders his chances of making as big an impact as he might at tackle. So,
Yeah,
we just it remains to be seen. But I think we've got good depth now. We've got good tackle depth. We've got decent rotational depth at guards. We've got backup behind centre. Evan Brown's here. Oh God, Jackson.
Drake Jackson.
Drake Jackson is here. I like the look of him. I still hope Stenberg comes to at right guard. So it's in a very healthy position, a really healthy position. And I mean, if you're not feeling like that, then pay $2 million and you get Trey Turner. I mean, that'd be a hell of a line if you added him to it. But no, it's in a good position and it's got depth. So I'm quite happy with where the offensive line is at this year. And hopefully Jackson has a stellar second year and as well. I think that's important. I think it's important to realise he is a second-year guy. He's still learning. He's still a rookie by heart. So, in between Decker and Ragnow, he should thrive. But yeah. I'm really happy with the O-line.
Just to paraphrase Eric Schlitt on POD, he did say about Crosby in one of the more recent episodes that actually when he was drafted out of Oregon, that he was projected as a guard. He played tackle at college, but because of certain traits, because of the potential lack of athleticism, they thought that he might suffer against playing against people on the edge, and that actually he might project best at guard in the pros. Now, obviously, he's played at tackle, and he's done quite well there. But what happens if he's a good tackle prospect, but a very good guard prospect who hasn't really been tried there? I can see a real path of the roster for Crosby where he's a starter, and a good one. So I really hope that he gets the nod.
If that's the case, then absolutely. I want to see him in the team. I want to see players who play well get rewarded. And he is one of the most deserving on this team from last year of a starting position this year. So if it's at guard and he does well there, then it could be really great. Forget Sewell's a duck as well. So you've got 2 ducks on the right there working together. They know one another because obviously Sewell replaced him there. So
yeah, Ashley just points out in the chat that although he remains tight-lipped on the subject whenever he's asked about it, that Crosby has taken reps throughout his pro career at guard in practice. He doesn't like talking about it because I don't think that's where he sees himself, but it's definitely something that he's been doing for versatility's sake. So, it's not something he'll be a stranger to.
It's his contract year as well, so I guess, you need to be playing to get a contract.
Very true.
So if it is at guard, then, I mean, hopefully it is. I want him to get paid next year. I think he's an asset to this team. So, wherever he gets his opportunity.
The thing about Crosby is I think there's remarkable similarities between him and Vaitai in terms of how much he's being used by his team going into the final year of his rookie deal. It would not surprise me to see a bad regime go big on Crosby next year if we don't re-sign him. If he signed a 3-year, $44 million deal, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know whether that seems mad, but I think someone thinks that he could be a mid-level starting right tackle.
Well, his stats prove it. He gave up 1.5 pressures a game last year. That was it. I mean, you're not going to find many tackles who give away 1.5 pressures a game. And that's even including quarterback hurries, which is, the easiest one to lose out on. You can't get much better than that, especially when you're against the league's elite edge rushers. He gives you a lot. So he would be worth the money, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. We have now the interior defensive line, and they are Michael Brockers, Trey Flowers, Levi Onwuzurike, Ali McNeil, Deshaun Hand, Williams, Penasini, Cornell, Strong, Atkins, and Heath to run off the last few. And to kick us off, I see in a 3-4 the starting players as Brockers, Flowers, McNeil. I know some people have projected Aquara in there, so they would be going something like Aquara, McNeil, and Flowers, with Brockers somehow not starting, or projecting Flowers on the outside. There's a lot of people who could be interior or on the outside. I'm not sure. But I would go with Brockers, Flowers, and Alin. In terms of Levi, I think that Levi, Brockers, and Flowers are going to see about 2/3 of the snaps between them. Adding that up, that makes 2 full-time guys. I just think they're going to rotate pretty nicely. Deshaun Hand, we'll see. I think he'll stay because his contract isn't expensive. Nick Williams, I think he'll stay because he renegotiated his contract and we guaranteed him a little bit more money than he was guaranteed before. So I don't think he's going to be cut. Penasini, I think, is the backup nose, and I think he played well enough last year to stay on this roster. The rest of them, Atkins, Strong, came in and did okay last year on that line, but they weren't anything special. And I don't think they're going to be here long term, so I could see them going Cornell. Let's see what he brings us. We haven't seen a big amount of him, and he could be very good. He did great at Ohio State, but I do fear for his long-term longevity on this roster. And Joel Heath, I do not think is long for this roster. How about you, man? How do you see the 3 down linemen?
It's like a honeypot of, it's like a sweet shop of different options you've got there, which is something we've not said a lot over the years. I mean, you just list names: Brockers, McNeil, Onwuzurike, Flowers, Aquara, all these guys who can play there. We've got a lot of options, and I think we've got a really good D line this year, and potentially, if the rookies come through really well. I'm really happy about where we're at there. I agree. I think if you're playing 3-4, McNeil has to be the starter. I know he was taken around later than Levi, but, I really, really rate his ability as a nose tackle. I think in 5 years, I said it the other week, in 5 years, he's going to be our Kenny Clark. I can fully see that. I can see him getting to that level of ability. Been one of the best nose tackles in the league. I'd start Brockers for sure. I'd probably start Flowers as well. But I mean, the sheer depth we've got, if we are on defense for a little while during games, it's not going to get tired. That pass rush is going to be fresh and ready to go. So, we're going to wear down offensive lines, just grind them, like Dan Campbell says, bite some kneecaps, knock you down. You get knocked down a few times, you think you've done your job, and then the next guy's in, Brockers comes in, you're like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing with myself here? I give up. So it's just going to be, beat down by submission in these areas. And I think it's the right way to go. You win in the trenches. It alleviates pressure on your secondary. And I love the options we have and the depth we have. So yeah, I'm well happy this year. I think Hands are gonna, say it's, his contract might prevent that, but Kerryon's contract was only worth $2 million this year. It's hardly offensive to the roster, and he's gone. I know it's less for Hand because he was a later draft pick, but I have the same thing with Hand as I do with Kerryon. It's like every year we're there saying it's his year. He's going to do well this year. We want them to do well, but it never happens. Hand had half a fit season last year. He was fit for a long time, and there was nothing. I know that the line wasn't the greatest in the world, but for a guy like him, who you're expecting to be great, you would expect to see more, and our line was just pitiful. And he had guys like Shelton and Williams around him. It's, you'd expect him to make something, and he didn't. So for me, the candle's nearly burnt on this one, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him go. The outside guys, Strong, Atkins, I'd like to see them on the practice squad. I think Strong might have something to offer. He did well in the last few games. He had an impact. So I would like to see him kept around for his effort and to come in as a rotational guy as and when we need him. But I think we've got the starters sorted. We've got a lot of potential starters, rotational guys who are just going to grind teams down. And it's one of the positions I'm really looking forward to seeing this year.
Yeah, I think I can pencil in 6 guys onto the roster right now, and that's Brockers, Flowers, Onzarike, McNeil, Williams, and Penasini. I think there is one more spot, and I think it is Hand, Cornell, Strong, Atkins, or Heath fighting for that one spot right now. And at the moment, I would put Hand in there as that person most likely to get it. But any one of them could win it. As you say, Strong played well. Cornell has promise, but obviously was just injured all of last year. So we'll see. But I still hold out a hope for Hand. I do. He needs a helping hand.
I want to, but I feel like we've made a decision. These players who we're emotionally attached to, but just aren't producing. We just need to cut these ties, cut them now, start afresh. I just think we've waited too long for this, and it's just not going to bear any fruit, especially with the guys on the line this year. I want McNeil to get time. I want Levi to get time. I want Brockers to see all the snaps just because, he's a Thor hammer wielding madman. Oh, God, I should have thought of something about that. I've got Thor's hammer. I've got Ragnow-rok. I've got loads. It's a Norse theme this week, but yeah, we've got plenty of depth there, and I wouldn't, Hand can go for me. I'd rather keep someone like Strong, to be fair, and I'm just so looking forward to seeing the rookies there this year. I think they're going to be really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. Right, let's move on to the next position group, and these are our 4-3-Ds, or our edge players, or our 3-4 outside linebackers, who I've kind of just fit into one positional group here. It's not quite fair, but there's not too many players in it. And they are Romeo and Julian Aquara, Austin Bryant, Charles Harris, and Robert McRae. And how do you feel about this position group?
It leaves something to be desired, doesn't it? I think, obviously Romeo's coming back. He's going to be a huge part of it this year. Julian, how's he going to do after the injury? We don't know. And then you're sort of getting down into rotational / part-time guys. I think, obviously, Harris is the mystery. What are we going to get with him? His production hasn't been great in recent years, but like so many of the other signings, he has the potential to do really, really well. If he fulfills the potential of that first round pick that was spent on him, and it's going to seem like a steal that we've got him for nothing, but I just feel like we're not going to see a great deal out of him. And then McRae after that, we're not really going to see. So edge was one of the positions we were going to struggle this year. The class wasn't great for edge. There were no standout guys. And looking at next year's already, you've got some really good edge guys already projected in that first round. So I think that's one we're just going to have to sort of put a sticker on it for a year and say, come back later. But obviously the Aquara brothers have the potential to be excellent as a pair, but we do need more depth there. So,
Yeah.
Again, it's a lot of what ifs. If Julian balls out this year like his brother does, then, suddenly the situation becomes a hell of a lot better. But it's what ifs. Harris. It's ifs and buts.
It is a lot of what ifs. Obviously, you can pencil in Romeo on that right-hand side. Now, he could play inside, he could play outside. And opposite him, you could have Trey Flowers. You could. And it would be an interesting way of getting Levi as a starting player to play Flowers on the edge or 3-4 outside linebacker role. I'm not sure he's particularly suited to that role, but I'm not sure that Flowers is particularly suited to the interior role in a 3-4 either. So you've got to play him somewhere. In terms of the others, so you've got Romeo in one, and I think you've got the other Aquara, Bryant, and Harris all fighting over that second spot. I would like to see someone else brought in. I don't think they're going to do it. Charles Harris has shown that if you play him as a pure pass rushing threat with no other things to be doing, that he can play well there. So I think he's got a shot as someone who, this defense is not a 3-4, it's a 5-2, and we're going to be rushing 5 every single time on that 5-2, and maybe 6. And that's what the Packers do, right? They have one off-the-ball linebacker, and they bring everyone else pretty much. So if Harris is just a pass rushing specialist who starts, I could see that happen. Austin Bryant, if he stays healthy, I could see that happen. Julian Aquara, if he starts to produce, I could see that happen as well. So there's a lot of what ifs, but they're only fighting over one spot. Romeo is not a what if. So you only need one of the other three to work out, and you're golden.
Yeah, and the thing with the Packers is they don't have very good defensive tackles. They've got Kenny Clark on that D line, and then they rely on Smith brothers and Rashawn Gary for the pass rush. So we have an advantage there straight away if we're going to play a similar sort of system to them. But I agree with you. I'd rather have Flowers on the edge and Levi playing more snaps. For me, I don't think Flowers should be on that 5-tech position. I think just, let him and Harris do the pass rushing from a little out wider. Let Levi do his job, which is to disrupt. And that's what he does best in the 3 or 5-tech. So, I'd be happy to see Levi start as well and just move Flowers elsewhere, especially as we're not deep in the outside positions. So let's bolster that with Flowers.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I think that out of the two positions, whether it's 5-tech or the outside linebacker role, I think that Flowers suits the 5-tech better. But I think he could play equal amounts of both, basically for the reasons that you say. But I do think the reason that I think he will play the 5-tech role better is we know that Flowers is a guy who is very productive at beating his man and creating pressure, but not necessarily getting the sack. Now, how valuable is that? Well, if you create pressure and force the man out of the pocket, the quarterback out of the pocket, and the quarterback manages to throw outside the pocket, actually, that can benefit the offense. It's actually not very good for the defense to have that happen. Well, that happens with Flowers as a 4-3 defensive end. If he's able to create that pressure as a 3-4, 5-tech, and you have an edge guy outside him also rushing the passer, Flowers creating pressure from the interior with an edge guy to finish it off sounds quite good to me from a schematic point of view. I'm not sure he's suited to the role necessarily, but I think it could work very well.
It all depends on where your viewpoint is. For me, Flowers isn't the future here. I don't think he's going to be around too much longer after this year, and I think guys like Levi are. So I'd be more inclined to give them the 5-tech snaps because Levi's a huge disruptor. His game is built on disrupting that line and getting sacks and creating opportunities for people. I think I'd be just more comfortable doing that and saying to Flowers, look, go outside, earn your money that way. Because I think I'm looking at the rebuild in full here. I just think it's better for the rebuild to give Levi and McNeil the snaps this year early on and, let them do their thing and develop. Because, after this year's done, with the amount of draft capital we've got next year and the trenches built, there are going to be expectations next season. And you want your rookies to be battle-hardened and ready for that. And Flowers could well be a cap casualty next year to save money. So, I'm not saying don't start Flowers, but in terms of positional, quality, I'd start Levi.
I would be shocked if Flowers makes the roster next year, unless he signed a new deal which made it a lot more team-friendly. There is absolutely no way he's on the roster on a $24 million cap hit with $19 million in cap savings if he's cut. There's no way.
No, and that's why in a year where not much is expected of us, I would rather the rookie work the 5-tech position. I think that's just more beneficial for the franchise long term rather than keeping snaps away from them with a guy who ain't going to be here for the full rebuild.
Yeah, with you. Right, let's move on to off-ball linebackers, and we've got Jamie Collins, Alex Anzalone, we've got Derek Barnes, Jelani Tavai, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Anthony Pittman, Sean Dion Hamilton, and Tavonte Beckett. Did you take D? Yeah, you took D, so I'll take linebackers. In this 3-4, which I'm going to call a 5-2 system, you're only playing 2 linebackers, at least in your base formation. Now, I think we're going to be playing the base formation 40% of the time, or so. and I think we're probably going to be playing a sub package about 60% of the time. And, so you might be playing a 3-3-5, in which case you might well have 3 linebackers on there. But I'm going to treat it as 2 for now. You definitely pencil in Collins, and you probably pencil in Anzalone as the starters. I think that Barnes has the chops to do it, especially in the sub packages. So in the sub packages with 3 linebackers on there, I can definitely see Barnes being someone who's going to be playing that role. Anzalone, I really like the look of. He's got some fantastic instincts to the ball, and he's a very tall, rangy guy. Actually, not too dissimilar to me to Jamie Collins. So he's someone who had major shoulder injuries in his past. They've worried about whether he could actually do it again. He had one final major surgery to try and sort it out, which worked. But you can see on tape that he does shy away from being a really high impact run defender. Now, there's a great piece on The Athletic, which is an interview with the Lions Athletic guys, Nick Baumgartner and Chris Burke, with an interview with Aaron Glenn and Anthony Lynn. And they're talking about signings that they've made and what they see in them. And Anzalone is actually a feature player in one of these articles, as well as Derek Barnes. But one of the things they say about Anzalone is they actually think that as time goes on with no injuries, that you'll see him become more of a feature in the run defense game, as well as being very good at the instinctual side-to-side movement, which they prize as a linebacker. Not only that, they see him as being a really good culture guy, bringing these rookies into the scheme. So I think he's going to be one of the more important guys as a senior. So Collins, I don't think I need to say too much about him. He's clearly the number 1 linebacker, athletic. He was a bit young in his career previously, and I think that's kind of followed him all the way through. So obviously he didn't work out. The Browns went back to New England to come here. But I think he's really grown up. Now, game 1 last year did not go well for him, but I don't think that was him being particularly juvenile or young. He made a slightly stupid position that the referee, I don't know why he reacted the way he did, but being ejected for what he did was insane. Now, he shouldn't have done it, obviously, but I don't think that points towards him being young. I think that he is potentially a captain of this team. I can see him going out there and showing people why the Patriots decided to put so much faith in him and why we did as well. I think he's going to be a really important player for this team. Now, Barnes, I see so much promise in this guy. I think he's someone who can actually start outside linebacker, outside Romeo Okwara. I think he could start in that Leo role. But we've been told he's going to play Mike. Now, I can see that happen, but I think it's going to be more in a rotational role if that's true. But I actually wanted to focus, when talking about linebackers, on Jelani Tavai. Now, this is someone who a lot of people want to cut. And I'm here to tell you guys, it's not happening. And I'll tell you why it's not happening. When the scheme was simplified for him, he played better than you wanted him to. Because you want him to fail. Because he is the epitome of the Quintricia regime. Someone big, someone slow, who's going to run stuff and come downhill and not actually be able to tackle anyone. But at the Combine, he's registered as being a 250-pound linebacker. Have you seen some of the pictures coming out about how he looks right now? He is thin. He is ripped. I think you're going to see him with a little bit more speed. I think you're going to see him with a little bit more twitch. I think he is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of this coaching change because he's actually going to be playing more towards his strengths, which we have not seen yet. Add to that the only player that I think actually threatens him as a player on this roster is Beckett. I do not see Sean Dion Hamilton doing that. I don't see Pittman doing it. And Jalen Reeves-Maybin, I'd love to say that he was going to be able to threaten him for a rotation role, but I don't see it. I just don't. And how are you feeling on the linebackers, man?
Boy, we are making ourselves really popular with our defense of Jelani Tavai on here, aren't we? Because I know I'm in the same boat as you, into which I see that. I said it. I think he's unfairly criticised a lot of the time. He got better last year, and no one acknowledged it whatsoever. even though the stats showed you he did. You know, he had a lot of he had a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. He was the guy on the mic. He was giving out all the orders. He was being asked to do 3 or 4 different things. It's not his style. Just work to his strengths, and if you simplify it and you give him an assignment, he'll do it well for you. But the linebacker group as a whole, it's kind of sort of like a juxtaposition to take, but it's one of probably the worst positional groups we've got at the minute. But it's one of the ones I'm most excited to see next year, you know, because of some of the guys in there. Now, obviously, Collins is your number one guy. I think I'm in a small minority who don't really like Anzalone. He started 9 games in the last 2 years, and that's it. His numbers aren't really that impressive. He's had injury history. You know, it's it's not a great stat to have just 9 starts in 2 years. We've had enough of injury-prone players here. He's not made much production-wise, but looking at some of the rookies and the lesser guys going in there, I think Tavai will do well as a rotational guy. I'm really high on Barnes. I think Barnes is going to have a mega year, and he's going to love having someone like Alan McNeil creating running lanes for him, because Barnes's strong point is, you know, his pass rush ability, his attack. It's the angles he attacks from. He attacks at narrow angles so that he can get through these smaller gaps that are created. He just goes through with such pace. He locks onto his target, and that's it. He's at them. The closing speed is phenomenal. And that's something we've really struggled with over the years, is closing speed for tackling. But as soon as he's got his eyes locked on, he finds the running lane, he finds the rush lane, he sees his player, he knows where to go, and he goes through. I think he's going to be a really good player, and I think he's going to be a first-team starter very quickly on this team, in my view. And I hold the same view about Tavonte Beckett. He is my sleeper of all the UDFAs. He's the one I want them to sign more than anybody, probably with, you know, along with Adams Jr. as well. But his tape at Marshall, he's very similar to Barnes in the penetration he gets and the closing speed he has to running backs, to quarterbacks, is just phenomenal. You know, his vision, again, it's something you can't teach. And he had so many tackles for loss, so many sacks at Marshall. And I think the only thing people going, oh, he's a UDFA, he can't be that good. But the big flags against him, one, I think, was a character thing. He got arrested when he was younger, but by all accounts, that's all done and dusted with. He was a team captain at Marshall, led by example, and apparently that's in the past. And he's at a small school, and small school guys get overlooked pretty easy in the modern day and age. But even though he's at a small school, you can still see the traits which will translate to the league. And for me, I see a lot in him which says he's going to do really well, especially in our system where we've got a lot of big guys up front, opening up offensive lines and taking out blockers and creating opportunities for guys like him with great speed to get in there into the backfield and cause some damage. So between him and Barnes, I'm really excited to see how they do, and I just pray to God that they give him a contract and let him go forward. At this point, I'd probably take him over Anzalone, because I feel Anzalone's not going to be here long term. I feel Beckett could be. And, you know, we have our 2 sort of speed guys there. We've got Collins, we've got Tavai as a bit of rotational as well. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing some of these guys. I really am. I think they're just something we've been missing for years, is just this closing speed, getting at running backs before they can get into space and pull off the big runs against us. And they're going to have the opportunity. So, again, on paper, it ain't great, but the potential I see is huge. And some of these guys could be really pivotal players by the end of the years. And Beckett is my one to watch out for in the UDFAs, for sure.
Just on Anzalone, I know he's had 9 starts in the last 2 years, but to be fair to him, he spent most of 2019 injured. He had 9 starts in 2020, and I think that's a bit more representative.
It is, but he's got injury history, and he's got, you know, he's got a track record for it, and I'm fed up of injured guys here. And we've got enough in our wide receiver core at the minute who are potentially injured over the years. And his production still wasn't great last year. I'm not seeing, you know, what he can offer that guys like Beckett and Barnes can't. So for me,
what I've taken from that Athletic article is that Aaron Glenn really values. So what they do is they take their down linemen, they give them the ability to really kind of take care of the line by themselves and not give any gaps to the linebackers to actually have as their own assignments. Let the linebackers use their eyes to decide whether to engage because a gap needs filling, or whether to stack and not engage and just run into the line like a headless chicken, but actually to think about it and realize where you need to go. And I think one of the things that I've seen in Barnes is that he's instinctual, but when he decides he's going to go, he goes. And I think that sometimes he needs to kind of have a kind of hand on his shoulder saying, just wait for a millisecond longer and see exactly what's going to happen, because I do think he is almost too eager. And I think Anzalone has that over him right now.
But you can teach that into a player. You can't teach Anzalone to blitz like these two guys do. You can't teach him the vision that these guys have. For me, they have the more important traits, and they're the ones I'd rather coach at this point. I can see where they're getting with him. He is an experienced guy. We do need a bit of experience in there, but I see more in Beckett and Barnes for what they are worth. And once that instinct is curbed a little bit, then they'll be really good players, and they'll be good players for a long time who haven't cost us that much. And, I just don't see the same with Anzalone. It's only my personal opinion.
No.
Only my personal opinion. Don't worry about that. I just love the way that Beckett and Barnes get penetration and the vision they have to see the gaps and just go for them. It's what this defense needs so badly, especially now that we're coming up against run-heavy teams this year, because they're specialists at seeing the running back, sticking with him, and just flattening them. Both of them tackle so well.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like it's time just to quickly discuss Teppo's question as well. It seems like the right time. He said, discuss the linebacker situation. We've done that, really, I think. Do you see any hope in the current group for this year, or do we need to wait for next year to see some improvement? Do you think that the linebacker group can be good this year, or do you think it's more of a long-term thing?
I think they can be good this year. I think it's going to be more of a development project. It's not going to be right away visible, but I think that we can see some really good things out of them this year. I think Tavai more as a rotational guy than a starter will be better. I think Barnes is going to give us something we've not had in a long time, which is better. I think Beckett is in the same mold, very talented guy who just needs, coaching correctly. And they're going to have the full preseason and everything to get in shape. So I think we could be pleasantly surprised. But I also think that it could be one of our biggest positions of need in the draft next year if it doesn't go well. Especially, I think Collins, he's another one who I might not see here after this year.
Oh, no chance that he's here.
I think regardless, next year we'll be seeing some good capital spent on linebackers. But don't sleep on this last year, especially Beckett. I'm predicting him to be of starting caliber by the end of this year if he's coached right. So we'll go for that. Don't lose hope yet, Teppo.
Yeah, so for me, I can definitely see... I think of this linebacker group the same way I think of the outside receiver group. It's boom or bust. I think that they could do very, very well, and I think they could do very, very badly. And it's more of a wait and see. I have hope, but I'm not placing expectations on them right now. That's, in short, where I sit with them, and I don't think anyone would argue with me too much on that. Right, it's time to move to the outside cornerbacks, and we have Okuda, Oruwariye, Dunbar, Melifonwu, Ford, and Jacobs. Where are you, man, on these outside corners?
Oh, I mean, potential talent-wise, we are loaded, absolutely loaded here. I mean, obviously, Okuda and Oruwariye, we both know what they are capable of, which are really good things. But I think a lot of it's going to depend on the senior corners. Again, Dunbar's going to be critical. He needs to come in and do well and lead by example. But, I think we've spoke about how Okuda's going to benefit from the coaching change, which he will. I think Oruwariye, providing that some of the pressure's taken off the secondary. And I think by proxy, a lot of the players are just going to be better because the pass rush is going to be better and the D-line's a lot stronger. But I think we're loaded on talent. I love Melifonwu. I took him last week when we were doing our draft preview, he's the one I spent a lot of time looking at. I think he's incredibly talented, especially, when he needs a little bit of work downfield, but when a guy's in front of him, he's good at everything. He's really good. And I think, he's one of the sleepers of our draft class for sure this year. I think we could be very, very well surprised with him. So I like the group we got. But again, it's what we were saying last year. A lot of players with potential, but they need to realize that if Okuda or Awarie realize their potential this year and Melifonwu has a good rookie year, then that unit is going to be very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think that if I was projecting the starters for this year, as long as he remains fit, I would like to pencil in Dunbar as the cornerback too. I know that he's perhaps not going to be here long term, but how he played in Washington, I think he can recapture that form. And as much as I want to give the young guys as much game time as possible, I'm not against putting the best guys on the field, and I see his ceiling as higher than Oruwarie's. Oruwarie is not going to be PFF's number 2 cornerback in the entire league in a season. I just don't think he can be. But Dunbar has been that, and he's only 29. He is not over the hill when it comes to cornerbacks yet. Now, I think Okuda and Melifonwu have really high ceilings. I really like Melifonwu. I think they're going to be our starting outside corners of the future. I don't see Melifonwu translating to safety after having slept on it a bit. I don't see it happening. But I do see them being our cornerbacks for the next 5 years. I think Oruwarie, as much as I love Amani,
he's in trouble.
I haven't seen enough from him. He flashes, but he flashes the bad stuff as well, and his baseline play is below average. It has been for a while. So this is a massive off-season for him, because I can see him with Dunbar and Melifonwu not getting the time on the field to prove that he deserves a place here.
Well, I said last week during the draft recap show that I reckon Melifonwu could potentially be Amani's long-term replacement, and I still believe that at this point. It's the cornering situation is going to be interesting. Are they going to go this year with the young guys, because obviously we need the young guys to do well and progress for the benefit of the rebuild? Or are they going to go with the senior guys and rotate in Okuda and Oruwarie? I wouldn't be against that to start with, maybe not starting Jeff. Just rotate him in, get him some good snaps, get his confidence up. They could go one of two ways here. It depends entirely how you think. If you're thinking from a rebuild standpoint, you want Okuda and Oruwarie starting because they're the two guys you want to progress and to do well. But at the same time, you don't bring in Dunbar and Elder to just sit around and twiddle their thumbs.
No. And as much as anything, cornerback is one of those positions that is so confidence-based, and you could see that from Okuda last year, and I know he was injured for some of it, but he kept getting burned, and you could see his head drop a bit. And you know what? It's not a place where you chuck a rookie in at the deep end if you can help it, at least not at the very beginning. I don't see Melifonwu starting, shall we say. No. That's not happening.
No, not at all. I would prefer Dunbar and Elder to start and do well to give confidence to the rookies. That's what we needed from Trufant and Coleman last year, and what we didn't get. Your rookies develop when they've been set a good example above them, and they don't have to be in all the time. Because we could potentially run a good rotational system again to keep them fresh. You've got Dunbar and Elder starting out, and you bring in Okuda and Oruwarie, and you've still got Melifonwu. If one of them's knackered and needs a breather, look at the depth you've got, the situational things you can do with them. So I think there's going to be lots of snaps there for them all, and there's a lot of potential there. But yeah, if you're going to give me a choice between Oruwarie and Melifonwu this year, I'm taking Melifonwu.
Have you seen much of Jacobs? Of Jerry Jacobs from Arkansas, the rookie undrafted free agent?
Both the corners, because there's AJ Parker as well.
AJ Parker listed as a slot in this.
I liked both. I liked the tape of both of them. I thought there was enough on tape to get me curious. I would like to see Jacobs here. I think you'll probably make the practice squad maybe, but I would like to see him given an opportunity. I think both him and Parker have traits that are transferable. and
Yeah.
with the right coaching could do well, but not for a roster spot for me. If I can get them on the practice squad and no one poach them, I'm really happy to have them there, let them develop and see what they become.
Yeah, so let's talk about those slot cornerbacks then. You've got Corn Elder and you've got AJ Parker, the undrafted free agent, and Ford has obviously filled in the slot in the past. Corn Elder, for me, obviously the number one, because I just don't think you want to throw in someone like Parker in the deep end there. There's no obvious other player to Elder that can play in the slot. Now, if one of Akuda, Oruwariye, Dunbar, and Melifonwu could play in the slot, that would be great. I've seen that Melifonwu could play as a big slot against a big receiver tight end who's playing in the slot. Fine. But that's not going to be someone who's playing in the slot a lot of the time. So I'm going to ignore that. Elder is someone who I think can play very well, but it worries me. I think the fact that there's no other player there seemingly says to me that Parker at the moment is in the 53 just because he's the backup corner in the slot.
It depends, like you say, where do they see Melifonwu to start with? It might be a good way to introduce him to the team, to put him in there and give him some snaps if Oruwariye and Akuda and Dunbar do well. So, the slot, I think, is just one of the positions that the draft couldn't fulfill a need this year. The secondary was pretty much ignored for a big part of it, which is surprising. But I think we'll just make do with what we've got this year, and then we'll probably go big on the secondary next year in the draft. But, give Elder a chance. If he does well, it's no harm, no foul. If he doesn't, then, we were never going to fill everywhere. It just wasn't going to happen. There are going to be some positions of need, going through the season. We may still pick someone up, you never know. But, if Melifonwu gets a few snaps there, see what he can do. But I prefer to see him outside. But just for this season, some positions you're just going to have to make do, put in some stop gaps. Wait till the next draft as well.
Yeah, okay, it's time to move on to the safeties, our last position group of the defense. And we've got Tracy Walker, Will Harris, Dean Marlowe, CJ Moore, Bobby Price, Jalen Elliott, can't say his name. Igwugabike?
Godwin,
that's the one. Amos and the Pickett, who we mentioned earlier. Why don't you take safety, man? How do you see that?
Oh, it's our worst positional group, I think, by a long stretch. There's not much good going on there at all. And I think this is one of the positions we're going to struggle at. I mean, safety was stacked in this draft. We did miss an opportunity there. And I think if we went back, that would be the only position I might be looking at differently this time. But, I mean, it's all about Walker this year. He's got no one blocking him at free safety now. He needs to have a great year to prove he's worthy of a deal. And for me, nothing, even a good year is not enough for me. It needs to be a very good year for me, depending on what type of money he's looking for. I know they moved him to strong safety and it wasn't his still suit and that, but he still played really bad. I don't think that can be denied. And he's the guy we need to come through there. Harris is rubbish. Marlowe, I don't really know too much about, but I know he's not played a great deal, and I don't think he's any more than a stopgap there. And then the rest, you go into, free agent guys, practice squad guys. I know you're high on Price, but to me, all I see is a good RAS. I've not seen much more so far. So, safety is one I'm really concerned about, and I think we still need to look at, because I think, is it not Roby Coleman? He's the nickel, isn't he?
Yes.
Who's the other one I wanted? Oh, there are still some good safeties out there.
Malik Hooker.
Oh, Ryan hates him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I mean, I can see why he's injured all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think the safety one is one that's just a complete write-off this year for me. I'm just not expecting much. Obviously, I hope Walker does really well, but outside of that, I'm not expecting a great deal from any others. I certainly don't see any starters who are going to be returning next year outside of him, possibly. I don't know if you disagree there, but For me, it was a missed opportunity this year to improve that dramatically.
It's hard. If I do think that our Darius Washington not being picked in the 7th round is perhaps a miss, because I really could have seen him doing something. I like the way that we took the defensive tackles in round 2 and 3. I wouldn't swap it for a safety. But if they had gone safety with one of them and defensive tackle with the other, I wouldn't be complaining either. So, it happens. You said that I'm high on Price, and you're absolutely right. At the moment, he's part of the 53. And I think he can be a starter. Harris is shocking. Marlowe has as many starts, almost, as he has years in the league. CJ Moore is nothing more than a special teams player. Elliott, we're not quite sure what we have yet. Godwin is not going to make the roster. Amos and Pickett could do something. They're the biggest threats to Price. But for me, Price has the physical tools. Harris does not. Harris was brought in as someone who had the physical tools, but he's proved he can't move from side to side. He's a liability, and I don't see him changing.
Oh, is Amos the Virginia Tech guy we picked up, the UDFA? Is it Angelo Amos?
Yeah, a cousin of Adrian, I think.
Actually, I take that back then. I think he's all right. You were reeling off names and it didn't instantly come to me, but I saw some tape on him and he was fairly good. And even if he's half as good as his namesake, like you just mentioned, he could make something. I would expect to see him picked up, I reckon.
Ashley says he's in the Trey Boston camp, by the way.
Oh, is it Trey Boston? Yeah, I think it is Trey Boston. I think Ryan's in the same camp as well. There was someone there. To be honest, I won't be beyond up picking Roby Coleman up because we need a nickel badly.
Yeah.
But I think if we made that signing, I'd feel a lot easier about that nickel group for sure. But we need another safety before this season starts. We can't be going with just Tracy Walker. We really, really, really can't. Obviously, the rest of the defense is pretty, it's all right. But unless, I know I've seen things about Amani swapping to safety. Do you just put him there and give him a year, see what he does? I don't know. But
I could see it. I could see Amani playing at safety with Okuda starting alongside Dunbar, Melifonwu being cornerback 3.
Yeah.
I think that works quite nicely, actually.
We'll see. I don't think you can lose much out of that. Because, I mean, what's Amani in? Is he in his 3rd year now? Is it 3rd or 4th?
Amani, I think
it'll be 3rd, won't it? No, because 4th year is the 2018 class. He's 2019, isn't he? I think.
Maybe. Hang on. I've got it up here.
I'm pretty sure he's 2019. He's not 2018.
3rd year guy, yeah.
So he's 2019. So he's going to need to start showing sooner or later. I think I would prefer to put Amani at safety and let Melifonwu take the backup snaps at corner because I think he will benefit from him more.
Yeah.
If we're going to run this, this little good depth at safety, then put him there. What can you lose?
Yeah. All right, let's take a little time just to talk about our specialists. Punter Jack Fox, kicker Randy Bullock, kicker Matthew Wright, long snappers Don Mulback, and let's get the name of the guy that we signed recently, right? Scott Daly. What are you thinking on these guys, man? Fox obviously is penciled in, but Bullock versus Wright?
It'll be a battle in camp for sure. I think at the minute you've just got to wait and see what happens with the kicker. Obviously Prater's gone, so we're going to be in a little bit of unknown territory where we're not sold on the kicking situation. By all accounts, I hear Wright's pretty good. I hear he's well thought of. But, Bullock's not bad. Bullock's a serviceable kicker till you can find another guy, I reckon. And again, I don't think Wither's not been as competitive this year. I don't think those vital field goals or anything are really going to come into the equation. I don't think there's going to be many game-changing situations for kicker. So if we're going to be without one, this is a better year than any. Obviously, Raymond's going to be returner. I think he does decent. He's got similar stats to Agnew, so I've got no problem with the returner. Fox, obviously, wonderful Pro Bowler, all good. So, and then, expect Don to start at long snapper again because he never ages and he'll probably still be playing long snapper when me and you are retired.
Yeah, I have the same opinions on you and all of those guys, apart from Randy Bullock, who I think actually is underrated as a kicker. Now, people are going to remember him for the pulled hamstring he had last year, which was obviously hilarious. But actually, he ranked as an average kicker in an outdoor stadium in Cincinnati. And I think, you know what? It's been shown to hamper the kicking ability if you're outdoors by, a fair few percentage points. If you put him indoors, I think you could see Randy Bullock doing quite well actually here. So I think he'll win in camp. And I think you'll see him do quite well on the road in outdoor stadiums and very well at home. I also think the underrated aspect of it is with Prater, you're always, tempted to go for the 55-yarder, the 50-yarder, especially when it's, 4th and 2. And, oh, yeah, but we've got Prater, so we'll go for it. When actually, they are not good percentage plays to make, even though Prater was so good from that range. You'd actually, on the percentages, much rather go for it on 4th and short than have him go for the kick. And I think you're going to be less tempted to do that with a kicker who doesn't have that leg. Now, if you're looking at 1 point behind, game on the line with a second to go, fine, I want Prater. But actually, when it comes to the game outside of those clutch kicks, I think that the team's going to do much better schematically by not having a kicker with that leg.
Well, Prater was bad within 40 last year as well. He was really bad within 40.
Yeah.
So I think he was naturally on the decline anyhow. And I don't expect to see him do much special at the Cardinals this year. So, it came a point where we had to replace him. So we'll see. I hope Bullock does well.
Yeah, me too. Right, that rounds up our look at the roster, and we've covered the 2 of the 3 questions already. The last one that we have to cover is from Tom, and he asked, with the schedule coming out tomorrow, which Lions game are you looking forward to most next season? He went on to mention about, obviously, the Rams with Stafford is obvious, divisional games are obvious, but, what stands out to you as a potential selection there, man?
Oh, you know what? I'm never thought I'd say this in a million years, but I'm quite looking forward to seeing the Browns come next year.
Oh, you took my pick.
I think, yeah, there you go. I think they're a hell of a good side, and I look forward to seeing them against us. It's going to be a good test, especially, our run. We've got good run defenders this year, and we should have a system where we should be able to nullify it. And if we can get after Baker a bit and put him under pressure, I think we could see an upset in that game. But in terms of teams I want to see, who I like, the Browns are good, obviously. The Stafford one and the Rams, I said this earlier on a post on Twitter today, I want that done and dusted in week 1. I want it out the way because I'm going to prefix this by I love Matt, but I don't care anymore. I don't want to be hearing all season about, we're going to play Matthew again. I don't want it to overshadow our future. I want him, he's in the past now. I want the game done and dusted. I don't want like a weekly countdown of 3 weeks till we play Stafford. I want to focus on this new team. I just want the game out of the way and done.
Yeah.
So I put no fanfare in it whatsoever. I don't want to see it really. Just get it done. I'm not looking forward to it. I just want to focus on Campbell and Holmes and this new team because he's part of a bygone era now, as much as I love him.
Yeah.
But Browns I'm looking forward to. Ravens I'm looking forward to. Again, I want to see how they do this year. They've got a good team there. I think have we got the Cardinals again?
Yes, we do.
We have the Cardinals.
Yep.
At
home.
Kyler Murray's biggest fan, so always look forward to seeing Kyler Murray. So
yeah, I mean, you've just mentioned the 3 games I was going to pick. I was like, well, if he mentions that one, I'll take this one, and if he mentions that one as well, then I'll take this one. You've said all 3, so I got nothing more to add on that one. The Browns, I'm really looking forward to because that team is epic. That's going to do it for us. Anything more to add before we go, man?
No, I think we've had a very good thorough going over the roster this week. So
we have. Right, our next episode is going to be this time next week. On the 18th of May, I'm going to work on a special guest for us and see if I can't get someone special. So we'll see what happens with that. No promises, but it's coming. Also coming up, I mentioned it last week, and I'm still promising it's probably going to be on the weekend at some point, but live film breakdown on all our draftees. So it's not going to be looked at beforehand. It's not going to be pre-filmed. I'm going to take you guys through a couple of videos, and we're just going to watch our guys and point out what we can see along with everyone else on tape, so no preconceived notions. My philosophy when scouting guys is you don't learn anything from their highlights, but you do learn something about the plays which are unremarkable, about their attitude. With wide receivers especially, you see what they're like when they don't get targeted. Where's their attitude at? And, when the O-line holds up quite well on a play, How are the feet? You know, he hasn't destroyed a guy, but is the technique there? And you only do that by grinding the tape. So I invite you all to grind it with me, probably on a weekend. Probably won't be this one coming, but it will be coming up in the future shortly.
And yeah, don't forget we've got our little combine series coming up soon as well, where we're all going to train to do our own NFL combine. That's going to be
I
something
need
to
to
look
get
forward
grinding on
to.
that as well. Oh god, it's going to be brutal, and it's going to be really embarrassing because I thought I was fast and I'm not.
Well, the thing is, obviously, we've just spent months just like pouring the microscope over players who we've never even met, and you don't understand these issues of the game, how hard they have to work, how much effort goes into this. So I think after we've done that, it's time we turn those microscopes on ourselves and see how we adapt to having to do something so challenging.
Yeah, in the lockdown, we've been pouring the microscopes, but I've been also pouring the beer, and it's not helped my ability to run. So I need to lose some
Oh,
weight.
you should have said microbreweries then. Going with microscope, you missed an opportunity.
Oh, yeah, I see it. I see it. Right. Don't forget to add us on our socials on YouTube. It's Royal Lions UK, and it's the same on Facebook. The Facebook group is Detroit Lions Fans UK 1 Pride Worldwide. On Twitch, it's ROTL_UK, and it's the same on Twitter as well. On Instagram, rotl.uk, and we've got in-depth articles, and I mean in-depth articles on all of our draftees on forallthelionsuk.com coming in the next week or two. We will, of course, alert you when they come out. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us 5 stars on your podcast provider. Any feedback you have for us is more than welcome. We're always looking to improve, get better, so that you enjoy listening to us even more. Just remains for me to thank my co-host, Anthony Fitzpatrick. I'm Matthew Turner. We'll see you next week. Let's go, Lions. One pride.
One pride.